Welcome back, fellow goblins. My name's Lila. This is Bulgruff, the king snake, and today I am going to be talking about Reptile Expo red flags. So, you want to go to a reptile expo, and maybe you want to find your first reptile. Well, reptile expos are wonderful in that you get to see a wide variety of species and all different types of sellers and all different types of products for reptile keeping. Reptile expos are so fun. But there are some things that go on at reptile expos that are really, really shady. So today I'm here to tell you what to avoid when buying at a reptile expo. The very first red flag I'm going to talk about is actually when people are selling and they have a really, really wide variety of species on their table, everything from amphibians to snakes to lizards, all sorts of geckos. That is a sign that they are not a specialized breeder and very likely are importing and selling wild-caught reptiles. So there's a reason why this is not something you're going to want to support, and that is that those reptiles very more often than not are treated very poorly by the people selling them and are sold with diseases, parasites, some things that are even zoonotic, meaning that you can actually catch it from that animal. For example, there are certain species that are imported that can give you lungworm, which is definitely not something you're going to want. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain it's the sunbeam snake. And so you're definitely going to want to avoid anything wild caught, especially if it's your first time. And this can be really difficult because sometimes sellers will actually lie. But one of the biggest tells that it is not a self-produced or captive bred animal is when they have that wide variety of animals on their table. The best way to counteract this is to go in with a plan. If you are looking at buying a live animal, know which one you want to buy and make sure that you get them from a specialized breeder. For example, if you are wanting to buy a corn snake, I would definitely recommend buying from a breeder who specializes in corn snakes. They're going to be selling mostly corn snakes, maybe some other types of rat snakes, but it's going to be mostly corn snakes. And that's just an example of buying from somebody you know is captive breeding. Does that make them necessarily a good breeder? No, and I'm going to get into that here in a sec. The next Reptile Expo red flag is going to be when somebody is selling reptiles and they crowd them all together. Say somebody is selling leopard geckos, so they put just a bunch of leopard geckos into a glass tank and that's how they're selling them. Or they put a bunch of bearded dragons in a tub and that's how they're selling them. Almost like how chain pet stores sell their reptiles, where they shove just a ton of them into one enclosure. Huge red flag. This shows that they do not prioritize animal welfare. They do not prioritize animal health. They are risking the animal's health by putting it there in that they can sustain injuries from the other animals in there. In addition to that, they very likely that's how they're housing them back wherever they're keeping them, at their house or their facility, whatever, which is not good. Again, it shows that they don't care about health. If one of the animals is sick, it can easily get all the other animals sick. It is just overall a really bad practice and a huge red flag. So do not buy from people who house multiple animals in one enclosure unless they specialize in like a gregarious species, and this is really rare. And so they're housing a gregarious species together. Like if somebody's selling a bioactive enclosure they built with a colony of mourning geckos, for example. But that is more often than not the case. The next one on my list is going to be the hard salesman, somebody who is there to sell and does not care who is buying or where those animals are going, so long as they are making a profit. This is so common. You'll see people who will sell to anybody. They don't ask the buyers questions about, like, how are you going to be keeping this animal? Where will this animal be housed? You know, are you familiar with the species? Do you know how to take care of the species? They will sell to anyone, regardless of age, regardless of knowledge. They will sell to anyone and they will push sales, and that is their priority, is making a profit rather than animal welfare. This is especially bad when it comes to species like Burmese and reticulated pythons, and in particular crocodilians. When I was 19, I had this guy try to sell me a dwarf caiman, and I was like, I'm not familiar with caiman care, and he didn't care. He was like, oh, you know, they stay small and you can keep them in like a 4x2x2, and we're talking about a caiman, like a crocodilian. They said that was okay. There's people who also sell like American alligators, and this is of course depending on state and county, but people prioritize making sales over where their animals are going. Like those, I was told one time when I actually got a roachie, the guy who had a roachie said she'd be fine in a 4x2x2, and a roachie is 14 feet long. So Orochi's that big white snake, my big white Burmese, ivory Burmese that I have in several of my videos. So yeah, if they prioritize sales over care and they don't ask you any questions as the buyer, then that is not somebody you want to buy from. My next Reptile Expo red flag is going to be that they give you improper information. I'm assuming that if you're buying an animal that you've done research, you know which animal you want and you know how to take care of them. If the seller is giving you improper information about how to take care of them, that is not somebody you want to support. For example, if they say that a reptile doesn't need UVB, that is a big red flag, because all reptiles should be provided UVB. This is something we've known for quite some time now. If they say, oh, they do fine with a smaller enclosure, kind of piggybacking on what I said before, like if you're looking at getting like a Burmese python or a reticulated python and they say, oh, they can live in a 4x2x2 their entire lives. If they're selling you a snake like an Asian vine snake, for example, this is kind of a niche example, but if they're selling you like an Asian vine snake and they say, oh, they do just fine on rodents, that's not true. That's a species that specifically needs to eat lizards. Or if they're selling you an Eastern hognose snake and they say, oh, they do fine with just rodents, when that's a species that actually does need amphibians as well. So those are just some examples. If they are giving you misinformation, that's not somebody you want to support. That's not somebody you want to buy from, because they are likely not providing those animals with proper care before they sell them. And last but not least, one of the biggest red flags is going to be if they have visibly unhealthy animals on their table. If any of their animals are like have eyes sunken in, have stuck shed, if they look dehydrated, if they have, spinal kinks, or if they have visible bone deformities, like they look like they might have metabolic bone disease. Those are just some examples, but that is not going to be somebody you want to buy from. This isn't in the case all of the time. Sometimes there are breeders who will disclose directly, like, hey, this is a crested gecko, it has a kink in it, and so this is, you can buy it for like a very, very low price. I just want to, like, basically like a rehoming fee like you'd see with adoptions, and it cannot be bred. This is a pet-only animal. That happens a lot. I've seen people who will sell pet-only animals. They'll disclose, like, this is the health issue. Know that you're getting an animal with this health issue. Like, I just want a $50 or $100 rehoming fee, however much it is, just to make sure that they're going to a good home and that you are not going to breed them. Some people will even go so far as to have people sign, like, no breeding contracts. I know with a lot of rescues they do that. So that is, the exception to the rule. But generally speaking, if you're looking at a table and they have unhealthy animals, you're not going to want to buy from them. You are absolutely not going to want to buy from them. It is going to be, money that you spent for no reason. That animal is more likely than not going to pass away or have a significant amount of veterinary issues that you're going to have to address, which is going to cost you a lot more money, and then you gave that person money to sell you a sick animal, and that's never good. So that is going to be the biggest thing to look out for. You don't want to give people money who don't care about animal welfare. That's not good. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think are some Reptile Expo red flags, or anything that you think I've missed, or anything that you've personally seen. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.